It is our pleasure to be joined by the head coach of the Oklahoma Wildcatters. He also just happens to be one of the best bull riders to ever live. JB Mooney is in the house. What's going on, man?
Oh, little as possible. Don't ever work like that.
Uh, you told us whenever you got on, you were working some bulls. What does that consist of?
Oh, just depends. That's every day around here. I've got a bunch of calves turned out. I had to pin them. Got to go through them, work them through the chute, just getting them calmed down so they're not so spastic.
Love it. Now, wanted to talk about your new role as the head coach for the Oklahoma Wildcatters before we kind of dive into your bull riding career. You guys have the first event of the PBR team season in Oklahoma City this week. Just how excited are you to coach the Wildcatters for the first time?
Oh, I'm pretty pumped. It being a new team. The first event we'll go to is the home team, so home game pretty much. So, the pressure's on. Them guys are gonna have to ride, and I'm gonna help them as much as I possibly can.
What is your role as the coach? Is it kind of lineup? Who's going where? How do you fit in?
Yeah, I help with picking, which guys to draft. Brandon Bates, we'd sit down, we'd talk about guys, which ones I like, which ones, I didn't think would fit being on my team, things like that. But my job is pretty much, watch the guys. If I see them doing something wrong, try to critique it, help them as best I can to make them the best bull riders they possibly can.
How difficult is that for you? Because you're one of the best to ever do it. You you probably just got some more natural ability to do it than some of these guys that you're coaching. Like how do you balance that? Like, hey, just do it this way when maybe they can't they don't have the skill set that you had.
Well, I started getting on bulls when I was 13, and there was not a whole lot of natural ability. It was I tied my hand in there and I made sure it wouldn't come out. And over the years, trial and error pretty much, and I halfway feel like I figured out how to ride them. But you, that's all I ever studied. From the time I was old enough to put a tape in the VCR, the rule around my house was I had to do my homework before I could watch bull riding. And so that's all I ever watched. That's all I studied. That's all I wanted to be, was a cowboy and a bull rider. So jobs I had was always something, working at sale barns, being around cattle, that. And, now I've got the place set up here, same thing. I work bulls every day of my life. And I think being the way I was when I was younger and paying attention, a lot of people don't know how much I paid attention to it. But every ride, whether I was zero, whether I was 92, when I got home, I put them in slow motion. I broke them down, jump from jump, figured out what I could be doing better to make myself better the next time. And, you know, I can sit back and watch a guy get on a bull and I can tell him exactly what he did wrong just right off the bat. And I believe it's because that's all I've ever studied pretty much my entire life.
How much is it scouting the bulls and knowing what they're going to do? I mean, I'm sure to some degree there's a guess when they're coming out. Like you're thinking they're going to do one thing, but how much of that is part of it, kind of knowing your bulls and being prepared for what they typically do?
Well, see, I always shot from the hip. I never set a game plan. The rule of thumb in bull riding is you set a trap, you get caught in it. And those bulls are smart. They people don't give them enough credit. They feel a fly land on their back, take their tail and swish it off. They know exactly where you're at, where your weight's at. So if they feel you kind of your weight shift to one side, they'll turn back the other way and try to buck you off. And so for me, I kind of went at it. This will be a little different for me. I didn't want to know what the bulls did because I felt like I did. I rode better just riding jump for jump, not setting a game plan, just let my body do what it knew how to do and keep my head out of the way. And for me, now I'm going to have to match guys up with bulls I think that'll fit, but it's still the same thing. Like, I just won't tell them what the bull does. If they ride better like I did, shooting from the hip, I just won't tell them what they do. Make the whistle.
So is that something you're having to learn about each of your guys individually, right? I feel like the greatest coaches, no matter what sport you're talking about, you got to know the way to coach each guy individually. Have you started to figure some of that out with your lineup?
Yeah, for me, my retirement whatnot just September last year. I rode with a lot of these guys, and one guy on our team, Clay Guyton from North Carolina, I rode bulls with his dad. So, I kind of know how they are. I've been around them before, but it's still going to be a learning process when we all get in the locker room at a team event. It'll have a little different atmosphere, I would say, but you just got to fill each guy out, and figure out what works best for them.
I've kind of always wondered, we come from the football world and you've got an off season and, you're lifting weights, trying to get bigger, stronger, faster. What's the body preparation for a bull rider like during the season, between events? Because I'm sure you got to stay healthy. So I'm sure you're not out there on trophy bulls all day long practicing. Like, how do you stay sharp without doing the full thing?
For me, that was the only way I did it. They've got kind of drop barrels and things that imitate bulls, but the drop barrel is to critique form, just minor stuff. And by the time they get to the level they're at right now, they've got the form. It's just the way it goes. And I feel like the only way, like a lot of guys say, well, you killed yourself off getting on practice bulls. That's why I stayed so beat up, so crippled all the time. But I felt like the more bulls I got on, the better I rode. And it's weird. It's hard to explain. You can go to the gym every day of your life. Like I know a guy that just came back and had shoulder surgery, been going to physical therapy every day. And he came to the house, got on 2 bulls the other day, and he hit the ground. And he said, "Man, I'm not in riding shape." It's a whole totally different, animal. And I feel like the guys that work more on the muscle, they tear more muscles because you get them bigger, you get them tighter. When you're matched up against a 2,000-pound bull and you're trying to out muscle him, there's one thing going to give, and it's not that bull.
Yeah.
So I more or less worked on flexibility, balance, things like that, to where I've seen a lot of guys that worked out, hit the gym every day, got big, stout, and they tear biceps, tear groin muscles. And I just think that it was because they were so big and tight. If you do get out of shape, something's going to give, and it's not going to be your opponent.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it, JB. Have you seen training for bull riders, right? You were in the game a long time. Now you're in coaching. Like, how much has the preparation and the training, like how much has that changed over the years? Like the approach?
Oh, it's a world of difference. When I first come around, it was the old school cowboy mentality. We're not going to no gym. I ride horses, work cattle all day. I went to a gym, once in my life to buy a membership for a tax write-off and never went back. And, for me, I've smoked cigarettes for a long time, and everybody would always, well, you're an athlete. Well, I'm not running a marathon. I can hold my damn breath for 8 seconds. And, I think a lot of it has to do more with mental. Yes, you have to be in shape, but the way I felt about it is I work enough during the day, messing with bulls. I'm always moving around, swinging around gates. I didn't need to go to the gym. I didn't have to work because the things I did at home were work enough. And then when I was 20, 22 years old, it wasn't nothing. We'd work all day, and then we'd go run in a set of bulls, and I'd get on 8 or 9 bulls a day. And that's just what worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody, and that's the one thing you got to figure out with each guy, and I've told a lot of guys, they said, well, you never worked out. Said, no, but the mental side comes into it. You do whatever makes you feel like you perform better, and you stick with that, and that's what you do. So if you go to the gym 3 days a week and you go to the bull riding that weekend, you win the bull riding, by God, you better be there 3 days next week. Whatever that you get stuck in your head makes you ride better, you keep doing it.
Now, your tactics are well known. You go pick up you're going for the best whenever you ride.
Oh yeah.
So kind of a 2-part question here. give me like the 3 or 4 best bulls of all time. And have the bulls gotten better over the years? I'm sure it's like everything's got more competitive. There's more money in it. Like I'm sure the bulls are also as the riders are getting better and everyone else is, so are the bulls.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's kind of like everybody used to joke, but whether they're raising and breeding bulls now, they better start breeding some better bull riders. It's like the racehorse business. It's all about the bloodlines, and you know, they are over the years. There's always been ranked bulls, but it seems like nowadays there's more of them. Used to be you'd go and if a guy showed up with 10 bulls, he'd have 4 on there were really, really bucking hard to ride, some with guns, and then the rest were mediocre. Now when they show up with a trailer load of bulls, every one of them steps off that trailer bucks like hell. And that's one of the reasons that I feel like guys don't practice quite as much like I used to, is because if you show up at somebody's house needing to buck bulls, they're not bucking, a practice bull. They're bucking their bulls, getting them ready to go events. So you're getting on a short round type bull instead of a practice bull. And I mean, it's a double-edged sword, but you're riding bulls for a living.
Did I'm pretty sure now your career ended. You still had a lot more years left in you as a rider, but the broken neck cuts it short. Did you really buy the bull that you were
Well,
on when you broke your neck?
I didn't buy him. They sent him to me. I called Matt Sharping owns him, and Grace and his partner, they owned him. And I called Matt after I got home. Matt was he felt pretty bad about the whole situation. He was like, "Man, are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I mean, I had neck brace home. I was already back home. And I said, "Yeah, I'm all right, dude." And he's like, "Man, I just hate it." And I was like, "It's not like you did it. The bull didn't even do it. I just hit wrong." And he said, "Yeah, but you're my buddy. It was my bull." I said, I mean, I'm not going to worry about it, so you don't worry about it. I said, "What are you going to do with him anyways?" He said, "Well, we're probably going to retire him. He's getting a little age on him." And he actually sends bulls down here to a guy's place about 5 miles from here. He winters. He's from Minnesota, so he sends a bunch of them older bulls down here to winter them, and so it's not so cold on them. Well, I said, "Well, put him on the truck headed down there." He said, "Why?" I said, "I want him. If you're going to retire him, I want him." He said, "What are you going to do with him?" I said, "Stand him in the pasture and look at him every day." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well," I said, there's not very many people say they have the last bull they ever got on standing there. And I said, he retired me, so now he gets to retire with me. And just so happens he's a big old pet. You can walk out there, scratch all over him like a big dog.
Oh, it's crazy. I know. I mean, when the injuries, obviously, maybe there's no, whenever you see him walking around out there, you got no feelings, but I'm sure deep down you want to get back on one more time, right?
Every day of my life.
Yeah.
It's the hardest thing I've ever fought in my entire life. The hardest decision I ever made. I mean, they made it pretty easy on me because I had 2 options if I landed on my head like that again, and it was either a wheelchair or dead. So it made it pretty simple. And I told somebody, I said, if it wasn't for my wife and little boy and stuff like that, having a family, I'd have probably kept right on riding bulls, because it's a gamble every time you nod your head. It's a game of inches. They step on you the right way, you're done. And so with them and being, my career, as long as I had it, I accomplished pretty much everything. I still is the hardest thing I ever had to do in my entire life. And then I still have to fight the urge every day. And somebody said, "Well, being a coach, is that kind of helping?" I was like, "Well, it's the same kind of deal, double-edged sword. I get to be around it, so it keeps me involved. But also, if I see somebody fall off one, I'm thinking in my head, hell, I could have rode that son of a gun." I mean, but that'll never leave you. I mean, you'll have that. I'll have that till the day I die. But it's I would rather be around it than to not be around it.
That's kind of like us, Ted. We do the
Yeah.
broadcast for football, so it's like we get to scratch the itch a little bit without any of the danger or feeling terrible all the time, like with the way that your body can feel. Now, going back to the PBR teams, you guys have the first event at Paycom Center, July 12th through 14th. Are you glad you're hosting the first event? Do you like it because it's new team, bunch of energy? Like, are you excited that you guys get the one right out of the gate?
Oh yeah, my career, when they back me in the corner and they put more pressure on me, I come firing on all cylinders. So I feel like riding bulls, you have to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. You got to have, it's got to be kind of a pride thing. No matter whether I was at a practice pen or whether I was at the bull riding, I wanted to win. I wanted to be the guy at the practice pen that got on more bulls than anyone else. You know, when I showed up to the bull ridings, when I had a chance to pick, I wanted to pick the rankest one in there just to prove to myself, I can ride them. And I feel like new team, first event, the pressure is going to be on to perform, and it'll make it a lot easier on me to separate the men from the boys.
For all the people that are wanting to come out to the event, who are some of the names out there that are some of the maybe big up and comers, some of the best guys in the game that are going to be at the event?
Oh, well, everybody in the PBR, Josh Frost, he'll be in Calgary. Unfortunately, he already had that, set before we picked him. Some of those guys, our top guys, a couple of them won't be there, but the guys we've got lined up to get on bulls there are going to be ready. Court McFadden, he'll be there. Let's see, Haken Braswell, he's a young kid, rides really, really good, and we're throwing him in the lineup. So that's pretty much our case hit. That's pretty much our team. I went with Josh Frost, is about the oldest guy on our team, and I told Brandon, we talked about it, I said, I want young guys. And he said, what do you mean? I said, it's kind of like the old saying, you can't teach a old dog new tricks. I said, for me, for instance, I was set my ways when it came to riding bulls. You couldn't have taught me anything else. I was going about it the way I wanted to do it. Nobody was going to change my mind. And I said, you take a young guy that's got the fire, the drive, hungry, and you don't change him, but you critique him. And I said, I think it'll help them young guys out tremendously to improve their careers faster than what I did, because everything I did was just pretty much trial and error. If it didn't work, I tried not to do it again.
Good way of doing it. Now,
That's right.
you made, I mean, you're one of the most famous names in bull riding. You made your living as an individual, right? Doing it your way. Are you a fan of the teens concept? I know it's only the second season. Like, how are how are you adjusting to what is looking like the future of the PBR with this team's concept?
At first, I was against it, but I was still riding. And as a rider, you can ask anybody. I went at it old school, and I was like, no. And they said, what? I said, I'm not riding my bull to make Joe Blow's living over here. I said, this is not how it works. And I said, I don't expect him to stay on his bull to make my living. But now, being on the outside looking in, not being a rider, I can see why they're pushing towards this. It's just like any other team sport. You don't just have you'll still have your individual fans, but like at a regular season event, you would show up, you'd have, JB Mauney fans, Guillermo Marchi fans, everybody was pulling for a specific person. Now you got a whole state behind them. And I remember it like Brazil. We went to Brazil for the Global Cup one year, and those fans during the bull riding were all Brazil. I mean, they cheered louder when an American got bucked off than when a Brazilian stayed on. But as soon as it was over with, they all wanted to take a picture with me. They were like, oh, they love you down here. I was like, they damn sure didn't act like it while the bull riding was going on. But, that's the way I look at it, is because, they're still, well, I like that guy, I like that guy. But I'm pulling for my team. and I see where they're coming with it from, and I think it'll lead into bigger things, and I think it'll be better for the sport.
Now, is your philosophy, you're picking the best bulls? Is that your advice for the guys on the team, those young guys? Because I'm sure not everyone is necessarily up for that.
Well, Brandon, he had to remind me a couple times. He said, "Now look, this is a team. It's a team. It's not just one gunslinger. It's a team." I said, "I'm picking up what you're laying down." But the best part is you don't pick your bulls. They draw a certain amount of bulls for your team, then sit down, you decide who's getting on what. So it's not like you're stepping out there and they give you a whole sheet you get to pick from. So that'll make it a little easier on me.
I'm curious just because you seem like a guy now with what you've got going down in Stephenville with your ranch and all the bulls and stuff. Maybe coaching was a natural next step for you. How did Gooch and Brandon Bates, how did they convince you to come coach the team? Because I could see you initially being resistant to that.
I thought about it a little bit. Well, actually, Brandon called me, and I still have my neck brace on. I had to wear that thing 6 weeks after I broke my neck. So I was out here working bulls with a neck brace on, sweating my ass off. And Brandon called me and he's like, "Hey, I got a question for you." I said, "Yeah." I've known Brandon since I was in it, since 2006 when I started in the PBR, 2005. And he said, "It's a new team coming in. I'm going to be the general manager. Would you be interested in coaching it?" I said, "Where's it at?" He said, "Oklahoma." And I said, "Well, yeah, I probably would be." He said, "Really?" Like he was surprised I said it that fast. And I said, "Yeah, because unfortunately," I said, "I broke my neck, so they let me off my last job, and I really don't have a whole lot to do right now." And I know me, it was nice being at home because the last 20 years of my life, I was gone. We never slowed down. I never hit the brakes unless I was hurt. And so I kind of got used to being at home there. I was like, man, I can get a lot of stuff done being at home, not leaving all the time. But I know me. I can only take so much of just sitting around doing the same thing every day, and I would get the itch to go do something. So this will be able to fill that gap where I feel like I'm still going and rodeoing or riding bulls. I get to leave and go to the bull riding and stuff like that. And the other reason, he's like, "You really would be interested?" I said, "Yeah, because I'd love nothing more than to come back and kick the rest of them coaches' asses."
Oh, I love it. If let's say you had one more final opportunity, you could pick any bull ever across history for a final ride. Who you picking?
Oh man, that's pretty hard. There's a lot of them older bulls from back in the '90s, early 2000s. I would have wanted to get on. To narrow it down to one, I don't know. I kind of like my face, so I doubt Bodacious. Uh, there's a bunch of them. Red Rock. Uh, there's quite a few of them old school bulls I'd have wanted to get on.
Now, clearly the riding career ends because of the broken neck. But what's the injury history? I think a lot of people look at riders, and my first thought when I see a guy on a bull is that dude's crazy. And then my second thought is, I wonder how many times he's been injured. I wonder how many surgeries he's had. What was your injury history like as a rider?
Oh, it started off right off the bat. Probably, well, it was about a week before we were going to buy our PBR permits. I hung up to a bull, drug up underneath him, and long story short, he come around and stumped me in the stomach, both back feet. Ended up, it broke every rib on my right side, lacerated my liver, bruised my kidneys, my spleen. Well, me being as hard headed as I am, I didn't go to the hospital that night. Went home, went to bed, and the next morning I got up, had a big knot on my stomach. So went to the doctor's office. They sent me to the hospital. They were going to die through me, went freaking out. And the surgeon come in and she said, as bad as it was, she said, you should have got up, made it 5 feet, and your liver should have ruptured and you bled out right there. You should have never made it out of the arena. For some reason, my liver swelled. That's what the knot was on my stomach, and it didn't rupture. She said, there's no medical reason why you're alive. Like, I don't know why it swelled and didn't rupture. I said, well, good thing it didn't, I guess. But that kind of was what really made me kick it into gear. Because, when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, you're invincible. Yeah, they can hurt you, but not bad enough, And right then, when they told me I should have killed me, well, heck, I couldn't ride. So I had a job at a ball bearing plant. I was covered in grease and hydraulic oil every day inside. And you combine those two things. And I told my dad, I said, when I go back to riding bulls, they're going to have hell throwing me off. And he said, why? I said, because I can't do this the rest of my life. And, it just made me open my eyes. Like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I better mean it. And so from then on, I've had injuries, a broken neck thing, but I got a plate and some screws in my left hand. I pretty much tore my right arm off. There's a screw and 13 anchors in my right shoulder. Got a plate against my pelvis to reattach all the crap I ripped off it, muscles, and both knees. I don't have anything scar tissues holding my knees together. There's no ACL, MCL, or PCL in either knee. I need a hip replacement. I just keep putting it off. Broken bones, stitches. That's the minor stuff that don't count. They sew you up right there in the back, so that don't really mean anything. Broke my back, left lung. The list goes on and on. And shit, there was stuff I didn't even know I'd broke till I tore something else up. I had to go get x-rays, and they're like, oh, when'd you break your leg? And I was like, I never broke my leg. They're like, yeah, you did. Yeah, that's why the subject is sore, I guess. But I learned at an early age. My dad kind of drilled it in my head. He said, look, this is all on you. Nobody's making you do this, but if you're going to do it, you play the game, you take the pain. And I lived by that my entire life.
Yeah, it's interesting because you ride, you get the 8 seconds. Now it's not like it's over and the bull stops and it's like, good job, and drops you back off over at the chute. Like, what's the game plan for getting off?
That's when I got down the most nervous, was when the whistle blew. Riding part was easy, but dismounting for me was hell. I tied my hand in that bull rope. I had it sticky, and the way I took my wrap, I had it buried off in there. So my hand wouldn't come out very easy. So when that whistle blew, I was like, oh shit, here we go. And a couple of my fingers don't straighten all the way out on my damn riding hand, so it'd hang in my bull rope, whip me up underneath them. And you try to plan it out the best you can to dismount, and seemed like all my plans never went the way I wanted them to. But if I would have been 25% better at my dismounts, I wouldn't be near as beat up as I am now.
That's good. You don't really think about that part of it, getting off once you've completed the ride.
Yeah. Either way, whether you do good or not, you still got to hit the ground.
That's a tremendous point, JB. Now, you accomplished, now that you're done riding, I have to imagine you've been able to look back at your career and kind of take that look and go, okay, yeah, I'm proud of all these different things I've accomplished. How did it feel, kind of get the ultimate honor and be inducted into the Bull Riding Hall of Fame?
I never even thought they would have called me. When they called me and told me I was on the list to vote for, I was like, man, that's pretty cool. And then they called me back and said, hey, you're getting inducted. Man, there was guys up there that, they got inducted at the same time. Pete Gay, my heroes, guys I looked up to. And when we're at the Hall of Fame, induction, I'm standing up on stage looking across this room at guys that every one of them played a role in my bull riding career, and they never had a clue. because I watched them old videos. You know, I never watched new videos and stuff. I watched old bull riders, and you know that from those days they were rough, tough, and cowboy about things. It was pretty much don't matter how bad you're hurting, you got a job to do and you take care of business. And so that's kind of the way I went about it. Be able to stand up there and get inducted into that with the guys that were my heroes and helped my career so much without them even knowing they had anything to do with it, you know. And it was pretty damn cool. I got to hang out, drink beer with my heroes.
That's awesome, man. I got one more for you. Is there anyone in PBR right now? And it doesn't have to be anyone on your team, just anyone in general. Is there any rider out there that kind of reminds you of yourself when you watch them?
Oh yeah, the way Clay Guyton rides bulls, the boy from North Carolina, like the way his free arm is, he's got a little bit better control over his free arm at a younger age than I did. But the way he tries, you know, he very seldom do you ever see him turn his head and take the easy way out.
I like it. All right, man. Hey, best of luck this week. You got the entire state behind you in the Wildcatters, man. Let's go.
Oh, we're ready to rock and roll.
You're the man, JB. Thanks for the time.
Yes, sir. No problem.